Hello everyone, I'm back with another update for the Cycles plugin for 3ds Max. It's been a while since I've posted a video to this channel, so I've just today, along with this video, I'm releasing the first beta version of the plugin. So I just wanted to make a quick video to go over some of the new features that have been added recently. And first of all, this is a big one for some people. I can't actually demo it here, but now if you pick Cycles Render here in the render devices, you have this CUDA multi-GPU option. So if you do have a system with multiple NVIDIA GPUs, you can pick that now, and it will render across all of them, which should give you pretty substantial reduction in your render times. But I've only got one GPU on this computer, so I can't show it off. On the stuff I can show off, I will start setting up a real simple scene here. So I'm going to start off just with a plane, and this will just sort of be the backing for our object. So the object will sit on this plane, and we'll also use it to reflect a little bit of light onto the back of the mesh we're rendering. So to do that, I'm just going to set up a real simple curved thing here. 100. So it's just each of these is 100 by 100, each of these squares, and then throw an open subdiv on that to get a nice, increase iterations, get a nice gentle curve. And now we can set up the object. So I'll just do a teapot here. We'll set it up to 15 seconds to get it nice and smooth. You can do like 10. Center this guy up. Alright, and now the first feature to show off is not actually new in the beta, but was in the previous version, and that is support for the Max physical material. So, this is not fully supported yet, like subsurface scattering is not supported at all. There's a handful of these small options that are not supported, like thin-walled. I have full details on that on the website. But most of these parameters will work and will look the same on the material between Cycles and ART and Arnold. So for now, I'm going to set up a material for that backing plane there, and for that I'm going to keep this gray base color and just turn off reflections. Apply it there. Apply. Then I am going to set up a material for the teapot. So I'll grab this. I will go to red sports car paint is one I really like, because it's a pretty advanced materials. It's got colored reflections, base color. It's got a clear coat on it. It's using a lot of these parameters here, and all of the ones that this material needs are supported by Cycles. So we get a really good reproduction of that material here. So I'll put that on. I'll slide my thing so the materials update, and then I will go set up a camera. So I'll just set up real quick here, not too worried about getting the framing perfectly right. Grab this. That's probably good enough. And now I will add a light, because another new feature in the beta is support for free lights in the photometric category here. And this is still a little bit limited because only the point light type is supported. So you got to pick point from this list here. None of these other ones will work. But I will be adding support for more light types later. Like I wanted to definitely support directional lights and spotlights, and maybe a few others. So I will actually switch it over to active shade mode here, and I'll just show off this. Actually, what I can do other than that is I can show you also the viewport here, because there's a really good approximation of the physical material in the for the real-time Max viewport. So what you can do is if you set your viewport to high quality, you can now see that it's actually being lit. I'll turn off edged faces. It's actually being lit by this light in the viewport, so we can see what it looks there, and that should look relatively similar to this. It seems this specific material is looking a little bit darker than it should. But in general, I'll pick cycles here, and it should look, oops, wrong viewport. And it should look relatively similar. This is actually a bad example, I guess, now that I look at it, because for some reason the material is super dark in the viewport, but that's fine. Oh, also there's one other issue I want to point out here. This is a thing with normals with the teapot primitive and max. You can see this black spot, this black spot on the top of the teapot here. That's easy enough to fix. It just can't, for some reason the plugin can't read the normals off the teapot right, so you just go in here and throw in an edit poly on top. And that will reset all the normals, and now when I do a render it won't have that weird black spot. So back to the light. The light, all the parameters are supported, so the filter color and, well, I'm gonna actually set that to lock, so clicking on other viewports now will not change what camera I'm rendering. So it supports the filter color, it supports all these different options you can choose here, as well as color temperature, and the intensity. So fully play around with this light. It doesn't support the fancy stuff down here, but all the basic parameters up here will work great. So what else do I have here? Oh, so another new feature that was added in the beta is support for tone mapping, which is actually turned on right now because adding a physical camera to the scene will set up the physical camera exposure control to be used for your tone mapping. So I'll render this out in non-active shade so we can get some comparisons. And I want it to be real quick, so I'll do auto select. So let's do 50 samples. I should super quick render out a teapot here, and I will clone that. And now if I disable this exposure control and render it again, you'll see what differences it's actually making. It's making the whole scene brighter, and it's actually just sort of increasing all these color values in a non-linear way, and then over here you have just regular linear color space. So all of these exposure controls are fully supported to let you get whatever look you are going for with your render. I won't go into detail about exactly how those work, but all the options on all of these things will work completely. So next, I'm going to go over some new HDRI stuff. So the way, or actually, I'll get rid of this, then I'll turn off high quality because there's no more lights in the scene. So the way HDRI is used to work in the Cycles plugin is that you had to go to the dialog here, the environment, and set you had to set the environment to an actual Cycles environment, and then go into the material editor, drag it into here, and then your actual HDRI bitmap you would have to, oops, that's not what I wanted. Your actual bitmap you would have to plug into the environment slot on the Cycles environment, and that was the only way to get it set up right. So now if I do like that and I render, we will now see this scene lit by that HDRI. As you can see a reflection of some trees in it. This is a really, sorry, it's an HDRI with some really gentle lighting, so it's not casting any hard shadows, but you can see a nice sort of reflection of what's in the sky here off the teapot. But what's new with the beta is that you don't have to deal with this Cycles environment anymore, so you can just set bitmap straight in the environment map slot, pick your HDR, and then I'll render that out again and it will be exactly the same. So now this is mostly important for if you want to set up a render that works between renderers. Now Cycles works the same way as everything else, so you just set the HDRI as the sky and it will work, rather than having that weird thing where it goes through the environment node, which you still can use if you need to set a different projection or if you want to use a separate reflection map, but is no longer necessary. And this also applies to the physical sun and sky, so I will grab that here. And then this one I do want to drag out here because I want to change the parameters around a little bit, create a position widget, and the thing about the physical sky is that it's really, really bright. So unless you're playing around with the exposure control, you probably want to turn this intensity down to something like 0.01, really low. And I'll play around with the sun. Sweet. So what that added just now to the scene is this sun positioner widget. And what that lets me do is pick the direction the sun is coming from. So I will zoom out here a little bit. Let's see. So you can see this, it's just a visual representation of it. So I'll grab that sun positioner, set it to manual mode, and now I can play around. So I want the sun coming from kind of more like this angle. So we'll play around with this until like that, and then make it a little bit lower in the sky, say 60 degrees, even let's say 55. And then I can do a render once I switch back to the camera. And you can see in this scene the shadows casting from the teapot match the angle of the light of the sun rather in the sky. And this scene brings up another important point for using HDRI environments. I will quick clone this. So this is what it looked like with default settings. And the setting I want to draw your attention to here, there's a bunch of new stuff for translating. Each of these has a tooltip that explains it. I'm not going to go over each of them, but the one I want to touch here is the MIS map size. So with the default is 2048 and set like that, we get a render that looks like this, pretty noisy, but that's only 50 samples. But if I up the map size from 2048 to 4096 and do another render, this should be a much cleaner image that it will still have some noise and some fireflies, but it should be noticeably less if you look at the comparison between these two. I'm not sure how well that'll play on YouTube, but I promise there's this image on the right is much cleaner with less bright points and fireflies around it. So this option will, depending on how high you set it, can use a lot of memory, but setting it higher is if there are fireflies being introduced into your scene because of environment and map lighting, turning this number up a bit is a great way to help reduce the impact of that. And that is it. That is all I have for updates. There's also, of course, there's other smaller new features and bug fixes that have been going into the plugin, and a few other changes. Full changelog is on the website, which is cyclesformax.net. Again, the beta is available now. I don't think I mentioned this yet, but as you can see here, I was running this demo in 2018, so now, starting with the beta, both 2017 and 2018 are supported. So again, the website is cyclesformax.net. Beta is up for download now. Give it a try. And thanks everyone for watching.